Thank you, Tony. Thank you, everybody, for being here and recognizing that this was an interesting topic. And I hope that our panelists will give you, share their energy and their passion for legal technology. And I think we're going to spend a significant amount of time on the topic of eDiscovery, which is gaining a lot of speed, and it's a topic that I learned about firsthand as an in-house paralegal for a Fortune 500 company. And going through the program, I saw how many paralegals, students, and talking with fellow legal professionals didn't have a real understanding of the importance of legal technology and the steam that it's gaining right now and how much they need to know about it. So I hope everybody learns a lot this evening and really takes that information and runs with it. So with having said that, thank you so much, Tony, for the introduction, and thank you for your help in putting this together, and thank you, Derek. So I wanted to set the stage for this panel because I don't know what everybody's level of understanding on the topic is. So I put together 5 reasons that paralegals need to know that legal technology is important. So first of all, I think we all need to recognize that almost 10 years ago, the federal rules of civil procedure changed to include the discoverability of ESI. And I think all but maybe 6 states, Melissa, have some sort of laws that have amended their rules to address electronically stored information. So the second reason that paralegals really need to understand the importance of technology is ethics and professionalism. Comment 8 to the ABA Model Rule 1.1, which addresses lawyers' duty of confidence, includes now the requirement for attorneys to keep pace with technology so they can service their clients. California has a proposed ethics opinion that requires lawyers to have eDiscovery skills. There's actually 9 skills that they spell out that attorneys need to know. As a certified paralegal, I'm obligated to follow their ethics codes, and one of them is that I too follow the ABA rules and the ethics codes that our attorneys are bound to. So reason 3, there is a major explosion of electronically stored information, and one of our panelists and I were talking earlier today that by 2017, the number of mobile devices will outpace the number of people in this world. So it's really amazing. You think all of us have a cell phone, we all have a computer, we all send emails. 90% of documents generated today are generated electronically. So that has a huge impact on the legal industry. And that gets back to my next point, in that electronically stored information impacts almost every case. It has that potential. So if you want to be marketable as a paralegal, you want to be able to work on every case that comes in the door for your law firm, your client, your business, you need to know about electronic discovery. You need to be able to manipulate the electronically stored information in the way that it needs to be produced or researched. So that brings us to reason number 4. You want to be marketable, you want to have the skills that you need to have, so you have career advancement and earnings potential go up dramatically once you have the ESI skills, the electronically stored information, the ability to find what you need to find and use that for your client, your law firm, the business that you work for, the agency that you work for. Right now, eDiscovery is the #1 hot legal job for non-lawyers. with an average of $122,000 annually. That is significantly higher than even some of the top 10% paid paralegals. So, and that's an average. That's not a cap on what you're going to earn. So that really opens up your opportunity. One of the more conservative estimates that I've seen is that by 2017, eDiscovery in services and software is going to be somewhere around $10 billion. I've also have the statistic here that the government and regulatory bodies, that's huge in the DC area, it's going to even outpace that by 2020, 15 billion. So you're talking about a significant amount of money that's going to be put into the people who develop software to be able to use electronically stored information, and they're going to need people to be able to do that. So brings me to my reason number 5. You're going to be highly valuable to an employer and a client. As paralegals, we're often looked to figure out the problem for our employer. You have an opportunity to be an ambassador of technology. Attorneys, law firms are well known for being slow to adapt to new technology, new information, new ways of doing business. You can be that point person for your employer and your client to say, hey, I got this. I'm going to ease your pain. We can do this. So that's going to improve your client relations. You're going to lower litigation costs. The more you know, the quicker you're able to use technology. You're going to have job security, and you're also going to be in a position to grow your career. So now that we've covered those top 5 things, I get to introduce our esteemed panelists, who I'm very grateful to them for taking their time out of their day to be with us. I'm going to start at the end with Tara Eberhardt, who has almost 20 years of paralegal experience. She's the Director of Paralegal Services at McKenna, Long & Aldrich. McKenna's paralegal program consists of over 100 paralegals supporting that support attorneys and non-attorney professionals in 16 offices worldwide. She's also an adjunct professor of litigation at GW's Paralegal Studies program. She's an advisory board member, and she earned her undergraduate degree from Mary Washington College, and she has a master's in legal administration, and she's also the former president of NCAPA, or the National Capital Area Paralegal Association. So thank you very much, Tara, for being here. Next to Tara, we have Tania, who is a self-professed eDiscovery nerd, which I love that. And she's passionate about all things eDiscovery. She has her bachelor's in sociology from the University of Michigan and a master's from Regent University. She has almost 10 years eDiscovery experience, including several years as a practice technology project manager for an AmLaw 100 firm. She's the founder of Saga City Technology Consultants, where she's an eDiscovery consultant and project manager. Is that right? She's also an eDiscovery instructor at Georgetown, their School of Continuing Studies. She's also a consultant for the Cowan Group and their thought leadership on eDiscovery. And she's also published in Litigation Support Today and ABA Criminal Justice Magazine. So thank you, Tania. And then next to Tania, we have Brian McCann, who's a project manager or program manager for the FBI's Director's Priority Initiative on Cybersecurity Policy.
I can give you the acronym.
Is there an acronym?
That's better than my last name.
So he's had almost 10 years at the FBI, and he's an FBI supervisory special agent and assistant section chief. Overachiever much? That's great. No, we're very happy to have you. Thank you, Brian. And then to my left, I'm very happy to introduce to you Melissa, also known as Rogo, but her last name is Rogozinski. And she has almost 21 years legal experience, about 10 of that in eDiscovery. She's the founder and president of the ESI Roundtable, a regional continuing legal education organization. She has her undergrad degree in communication and marketing from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. She also has her associate's degree in paralegal technology. And she has an impressive passion for eDiscovery, and through ESI Roundtable has produced 200 programs for over 5,000 attendees in the US and Europe. So she's published articles on eDiscovery, and she's been a guest speaker on job search strategy and paralegal technology. So she's also been nominated for the top 40, under 40 in Birmingham Business Journal. So thank you very much for being here, and we will start our first question. And I'd really love to hear from each of you, like kind of what your role is in your position and how you see technology changing the legal industry. And you can share the mic, it just goes on there. And it actually, you can take it out. It's a wireless mic, so that's really nice. And Tara.
All right. Well, as a director in an AM 100 law firm, my primary role now with eDiscovery is helping to shape what we need paralegals to know, what our hiring criteria are for paralegals within the litigation space, and specifically as it relates to eDiscovery. Be it tools, technologies, or processes. I also serve on our eDiscovery Council within McKenna, which is our Director of Litigation Support, our eDiscovery Councils, Department Chair for Litigation, and a couple other departments that do some litigation, although they don't call themselves lit. And our role is to try to create some processes within McKenna so that when we partner with our clients and with outside services, some of which are represented here, that we can speak intelligently about what we need and what our clients need, and how that's going to interface with the legal services that we provide.
So I'll speak from two perspectives. One, in a sense of teaching in the paralegal program at Georgetown, but also in the consulting role that I play with the Cowan Group. It's that technology today is very important because the legal industry is going through a metamorphosis, right? So a lot of the clients are demanding efficiencies, they're demanding like alternative fee structures, they want predictability. And technology, in a large part, is driving that and enabling that. And so essentially, I mean, in terms of the paralegal role, it has to evolve into more of a paratechnical role. You have to become ambassadors, otherwise today's clients aren't going to pay for yesterday's job descriptions. So the job descriptions and what you're writing in your descriptions has to evolve. It has to elevate for clients and law firms to continue to see those realization rates for those positions. Otherwise, I really feel like it's going to become obsolete. And so it's how do you stay ahead of the curve? You know, it's like, I think it was, please, I'm so bad at sports analogies, and I still steady tried, you know, but I think it was like Wayne Gretzky who said you need to, you know, skate where the puck is going and not where it's been, right? And so I think that's where it is with the paralegal role and with technology is that, okay, data analytics, that's where the puck is going, you know? It's using advanced review technology, it's understanding, you know, trial databases, it's being able to speak the language of today's collections, otherwise, it's, you know, what's the point of having them at the table?
So in my background, I was in computer science, and then I went to law school and joined the FBI and actually worked a long time on using big data analytics and how to actually take that and make it in an operational capacity. Where I've moved to most recently is kind of advising the director and the executive management at the FBI on how are we doing redoing our cyber strategy as a whole. The key component that the way cyber has changed the way that we look at investigations, it's the first time in the government where, before, if there's a bank robbery or if there's a counterterrorism incident, obviously we're going to investigate it, and we want partnership with private industry, but we're going to investigate it no matter what. In cyber, if we don't have the partnership with private industry, it doesn't exist. We actually don't have a way to investigate it. So we're actually going out and working more and more with private industry proactively. To say that most private companies have probably been breached in some way is probably an understatement, and most of them are probably not even aware of it. So actually a lot of times when companies realize, sometimes we're the first ones telling them that they've been breached because we find out through other mechanisms and we're coming to approach the company to let them know that they've been breached, or sometimes they'll discover first and they'll come to us. But really from a government standpoint, it's that engagement beforehand now. So we'll be working with the law firms and in the in-house counsels to actually say, let's set things up, let's set up relationships, information sharing capabilities. There's a lot of legislation that's coming out on the Hill. The president just spoke the other day of different cyber centers that he's trying to push, and the liability protections that might be attaching around those cyber centers for information sharing. So we're really trying to set up those strategies, working very closely with the general counsel's offices in different places, with the different law firms, to say, what can we do? What information can we share that we're both comfortable with, and to make sure that we're maximizing those protections. So that's really the angle that we're trying to push. And I'll tell you, our strategic thrust here is private sector engagement in cyber. Without that, we have nothing.
So I'm going to touch on a couple of things. First of all, how many in the audience are practicing paralegals right now? Raise your hand. Okay. Raise your hands down. At the table, how many of you used to be paralegals and are now doing something else? Raise your hand.
Oh, well. I'm working abroad with paralegal knowledge now, I guess.
So 4 out of the 5 of your panelists have been paralegals, and technology has changed our career path, okay? And so how many of you would like to make 6 figures? Go ahead, raise your hand, because I know you all do, because I do too. Right. I have a Michael Kors habit to support. Yeah, that's actually true, and this is going on the web, and I have so many people that know that's true. So let me just kind of bring this home to you. How many of y'all have heard of Casey Flowery, General Counsel at Kia Motorsports? Okay, I know, yeah, Peter has. All right, Casey Flowery is the GC at Kia Motorsports, and a few years ago, as he was, after he became GC, he was reviewing invoices from his outside counsel, and he actually ended up putting together a basic technology test. I'm talking about basic, like learning how to use Microsoft Office, Word, PowerPoint, Excel spreadsheet, and doing basic functions. And he tested his counsel, and they all gloriously failed. And he said, look, I'm not going to fire you, but I'm not paying your hourly rate that you're charging me because you're not using technology appropriately to be more efficient in your practice for me. So, let's bring this to ground level. Now you add the element of eDiscovery to it. Like Angela was saying a minute ago, we were actually talking about an article earlier today that was published, I think, in Inside Counsel earlier this year, and it said that there's 7.1 billion mobile devices on the planet right now. That's is it trillion? Trillion. That right now, that's 1.4 mobile devices for every human being on the face of the planet. There are more mobile devices on the planet than there are living, breathing human beings. Okay? So, the fact of the matter is, the laws were changed 10 years ago. There are a lot of firms and organizations that have been dealing with big data for the last 20 or 30 years. The internet was developed as a security and communications portal for the government, for the military. So this is not new. Honestly, the legal industry is second only to the medical industry in actually dealing with what we call big data. We are really far behind. And so the things we're going to talk about tonight, I knew, and I'm sure that Tara did and Tania did, I've been in this for 10 years, but I've known that it would be between 2014 and 2016 when the industry finally picked up its head and realized we can't deal with it. And I think 2 reasons why they've been struggling is fear out of the technical terminology that has been developed. We were raised to practice law, and that simply wasn't a part of our vocabulary, all of these technical terms, where vendors call someone who may have information a custodian. We have typically called it a witness. Okay, we're subpoenaing the witness. now it's a custodian. They're just using different terms for some of the same functions we've always done. And the second reason was the cost. It was astronomical 10 years ago, but now, you know, we as a thought leader group have done a better job of being educated. We've gotten the vendors to get their...
And so understanding technology that is impacting your industry, regardless of what type of technology it is, it doesn't have to be eDiscovery technology. It could be case management software. It could be document management software. It could be information governance software. If you're in IP, it could be IP matter, you know, I don't know, I'm not in IP, let me not, I see, it's like the sports analogies, I always try to go where, let me go back over to eDiscovery. But regardless, stay in your lane, right? Regardless of what the technology area is, it's you raising your hand and saying, hey, I read about this. I think this will be amazing for our group, for our department, and you being the person to advocate for it. It's educating yourself, empowering yourself, and then you being the person to move that forward. And when it comes to technology, I really feel like that's when you become a valuable asset. That's when the partners always want you in the room. That's when the partners are like, oh my gosh, yeah, that person. Like, and so I just think that that technology ambassador is probably one of the most important skills that you can develop right now.
I'll echo that. I mean, I was computer science. I had some of the hard skills from before, but I tell everybody now I know enough to break a code base, so you don't want to me anywhere near technology itself. And to use the a sports analogy, and I actually use this a lot of times, like you don't have to love baseball, but it'd be a good idea to kind of know what an ERA is. And that's kind of the way to approach life, and I think a way to approach the technology here. And my advice would be to a lot of people is like, you might be in the position in your career where you need the hard skills that you actually know how to do the data mining and the mapping. You might be in more of an advisor capacity. And the best thing that I've found, and this has really been where I've kind of gone in my career, is being able to take complicated terminology, complicated things, and be able to explain them in a simplified fashion to either those that you're working for and supporting or to clients. So I use everything in analogy, and I try to break it down in a real simple fashion. A little bit about me. Back when I was in undergrad, I spent some time at a lovely establishment called Best Buy working in their tech bay, and everybody would say, well, what is RAM? And I said, well, very simple. Think of it as that you have a desk in front of you. The more RAM you have, the bigger your desk, the more things that you can have out there at the same time. So everybody can get on board with that. If you can explain those in very simplified terms, people all of a sudden feel comfortable with technology with not even knowing the nuts and bolts of it. So that's always my suggestion, is to be able to break things down in that manner.
So Brian, I have a quick question for you. When you were describing some of the field work and engagement with business that you would do, was there any legal professional other than an attorney that had some skills that really stood out to you that made your job easier? Because I really think that as a legal professional, that's what we should really strive to do, is to make other people's jobs easier.
Yeah, so it's interesting is, you know, you're going to be pulling in and you're actually going to be dealing with a completely different skill set and different personalities. And I say this from my brethren in the computer science realm, sometimes we're a little bit quirky. So you're going to, that's the thing is being able to engage with multiple people in multiple areas. Just now, I mean, if you're not having, you know, the chief security officer, or if the chief security officer isn't knowledge on what's going on in cyber, that's a problem in and of itself. But your chief information officer, your chief security officer, your chief technology officer, they should probably be in a lot of conversations in this. And you're just seeing now that the C-suite is actually really getting engaged around cyber. You know, we talk about data is now a resource. Everybody treated it as an expense of something that we have to protect, as opposed to a commodity that's actually valuable in the resources. The first ones that probably got on board with this was the financial services industry, knowing the data. But there's a book out there, if you haven't read it, called Super Crunchers. It talks about big data, analytics, the things that Target has done, the different airlines have done. Very easy read. But just simple things like that, being knowledgeable in that workspace. But a lot of times the attorneys are the last ones to come on board with technology because of the things that have already been discussed on the panel. Is, you know, this hasn't traditionally been part of training. So it's almost like we're incumbent that we actually go find the other people in the company and make them sit down with the attorneys. Because if I say, hey, we're going to virtualize your data center and we're going to put all the data together, every attorney in the room gets really, really scared. Then we go to the analogy standpoint and be like, you do this every day. You have a Google account, or you have a Gmail account. That's all on one server, but you can only get to your access and sliver. Everybody kind of calms down a little bit. So it's kind of like being able to navigate that.
So when you asked the question, I got so excited that I took the microphone away from Brian, and I realized he's a real person. He had something to contribute. So, notwithstanding the fact I'm out on my Xanax prescription, I had to work hard to hand that microphone back. Oh my God! And then Tania started speaking. I was like, "Oh my God, you go, girl, you go, girl!" Oh my God, I'm such a nerd for this stuff. Okay, so anyway, I agree 100% with what Tania said, and I think you need to listen to what Tara said too. That you're not going to be guaranteed 122 grand income, but you are definitely guaranteed a higher income with these skill sets. And just to add, I think Angela did a really good job of putting together the resource list for you. We all had an opportunity to review that before you were given it. I would highly recommend that you spend time when the vendors call you and want to take you out for coffee or lunch or whatever. Make appointments with them and sit down and schedule demos with them. If you don't have the opportunity in your company or your firm to work on eDiscovery matters, ask. Start teaching yourself. I'm going to call you out, Peter. My Peter. God bless him. I'm so happy to meet him in person today. My Peter has attended many of the roundtable programs via WebEx. And Peter himself is not on the eDiscovery practice team with his firm, but he attends programs with Roundtable and other vendors and other resources at every opportunity he gets because he learns so much. Regardless of the fact that he and his attorneys are not in that specific practice group, they're still dealing with it. And he always has a lot of good information to take back and help his attorneys. So, you have to take initiative. And then finally, and I'll wrap this up, Exterro, EXTERRO, that is an enterprise solution vendor. They absolutely have some of the best free webinars I've seen across the entire eDiscovery industry. Roundtable has good programs too, but not yet.
Soon, coming soon. So I think to sum up what the panelists were saying is really one of the best technical skills you can have is initiative. So we're not going to sit here all day and list each little program that you need to have, and we can't address every little situation that you may encounter in your role. But always don't just take what is given to you. Think outside how you can be creative and make yourself the most useful to your employer or your client. So I think we kind of addressed this, but in your answers to the previous question, but feel free to kind of elaborate on it. But I think what would be really interesting to talk about is why these technical jobs in the legal industry are such a good fit for paralegals. Why is it that they are so well positioned to apply their legal knowledge to the new technical world?
10 years ago, when I left being a paralegal and I went in-house to a vendor to do business development, the reason I was competing with two other people for the job, and the reason I got the job is because I was a paralegal. I understood the process of litigation. I understood that the reason our law firm was in business, first and foremost, was to protect the client and help them just do business on a daily basis and be there when litigation did happen. I understand how to write an answer to a complaint. I understand how to write and respond to discovery, go through the motion practice, depositions and trial. I understood the entire process. And as I have gone through that and also been a business owner with the Roundtable, I've had an opportunity to get to know a lot of different vendors. And I also find that the vendors that I think are the most successful are those who have on their team paralegals or attorneys who have actually had legal department or law firm experience, just simply because they understand the process in a way that you just can't teach academically. It's just by experience. Is that quick?
No, I think you hit it right on. It makes you multifaceted. There's not a person I would hire today that if they don't have at least a baseline set of legal skills, or technical skills, or at least show the initiative around figuring out what those are. And I know we'll get into it in a little bit on how you can gain those, but I mean, the nice thing is technology now makes the ability to acquire technological skills very, very simple. And so if you're out there and doing that, plus if you're able to do this, you're showing the real impact, and I know we focus a lot on eDiscovery, but we've hit the litigation part at that point. And I look at things from a preventative posture. And how can we actually start moving everything for when you're advising clients and you're looking up and setting up structures to say, how do we make sure we don't get there? And not even from just a liability standpoint, but the big thing, I focus a lot on data breach, obviously, just because then we respond to it. And when I always say, we're trying to get to a posture where we're actually giving information to prevent the breach. We're great at investigating it, and we'll figure out who it was, and we'll do it. But once we're there, we've already lost part of the game.
So I think that having worked in the legal industry my entire professional career, I personally think that understanding lawyers and understanding the legal environment is very tricky. It takes a special skill set, and I think it's much easier to add your technology expertise to that understanding of lawyers than for IT people who are already kind of quirky to come over and try to understand lawyers. I think it kind of works better from the paralegal side. I just think, honestly, and it is biased in some people who, come over to the legal tech industry purely from IT. That's fine, but my personal opinion is I think that we are better suited to take on some of the IT understanding, to take on some of the, tech branding and marry that with our legal skills and vice versa. And so I think that it's the prime, target audience to move over to legal tech.
When you talk about, paralegal skill sets, we all hear, highly organized, detail-oriented, process-specific, the ability to problem solve, people who are client service-oriented and think outside the box. Those are traditional buzz phrases, that managers look for, in paralegals. And I think all of those are really well suited to the tech side as well. And I think that's why paralegals, especially paralegals who understand litigation process and can translate attorneys or translate for attorneys, depending which direction you're going. I also think it's really interesting, and I have sort of a unique personal twist on this. My husband has been a programmer for 20 years, and we both did our masters back to back. So I did a master's in legal administration, he did a master's in computer science, and so for 3 years we both project shared and bounced things off of each other. And my discussions with him about how a law firm operates as a business and the need to sort of work on things from that perspective, and his discussions with me about how IT people don't understand why legal people just can't tell them what they want up front, right? Why can't you just tell us? You don't understand when you add a field or you change a feature or you do something that's an entirely different product that doesn't work the same way. And so just having a legal person and a techie person in the house trying to have some of those conversations, you realize how different our lexicon is and how different we approach projects, and how you have to find that commonality before you can talk about the substance. And I think that's why paralegals do really well in that space, is because we're so used to figuring out how to translate and how to do things in 30-second vignettes, because that's the attention span we usually have sometimes.
I had most of those conversations in my head. They're very scary.
I was just going to say, if you've ever had the opportunity to see an attorney do a 30B6 deposition on an IT person, that is proof 100%. I mean, the way that IT people think about things, it's just very linear. It's very, and my husband, he's a systems administrator. So we have this. He tells me I'm not a true techie because I'm in eDiscovery, and we have that conversation. But I just wanted to say that I agree that a lot of times there's this huge disconnect. But what I want to say too, though, is that if you can learn to be that bridge. So I'm not. I majored in sociology, as Angela said, but I've learned to understand that technology lexicon. And so when you have that disconnect, if you can learn to be that bridge between that legal team and that IT team, who the one person who's saying, well, if you change the field, then it's this, and you can translate, then that is such a valuable skill that will allow you to elevate your career. So it's not just saying, oh, okay, I'm on one side or the other, but learning both lexicons in an effort to bridge the gap. So.
Thank you, Tania. And I think it might be important to mention that in my research for this program, it was mentioned to me that two scenarios are happening. You can develop a highly specialized skill set for technology and remain a paralegal, perhaps a litigation specialist, or be an eDiscovery paralegal, or there's a whole other wave of jobs that are gaining pace. I say they're new. They're not new, but they're new to many in the legal industry who just haven't been paying attention. So there's two ways that you could look at this information. You could remain a paralegal if that's what you want, or you can take your career in a whole other direction. So thank you all for your insightful comments on that question. And so if you all could weigh in on how people can refine, gain these skills that paralegals need to better service their employer, their clients. You want to start, Melissa?
We addressed this earlier. We all kind of got excited about what skills you should have, and we just kind of went off on our own tangent, but it's all true. I'm just going to bring up one thing. I get asked a lot about the different certifications that are out there, and is that going to help me make more money or whatever? And through the conversations and the networking and the education that I have been involved in, I will say that having a SEDS certification is not necessarily going to help you get a better job or help you get paid better. If you really want to start advancing your career, then I would highly recommend you get a PMP and or get certified in some of the technology like Relativity and some of the other leading eDiscovery technologies out there. And I'm going to pass it on.
So coming from someone who has done way too much education, I will say, and this is more of a philosophical approach, is I do believe we need to change the methodology on the way that we're looking at things right now. If there's something that you want to know, a couple years ago I was interested in real estate finance, don't ask me why. So I got online, iTunes University, completely free, took 4 classes from Stanford in iTunes, in real estate finance. And went to an MBA school afterwards here, got to my finance class, and actually already knew most of the things that were being taught there. So if there's something that you're interested in, whether it be on the technology side, if you actually, anything you hear, you're like, what's a Hadoop cluster? If that came up for some reason in your environment, which I had no idea, it just came up 6 months ago, I was like, Hadoop cluster, what is that? So you go to Wikipedia, and you can find that information out, and that's going to lead you into the directions you want to go. There's more free resources out there now then you can take a stick at. We're only limited really by time, and we all have very busy schedules, so I understand that in your personal lives. But WebEx or edX, which is Harvard, MIT, Stanford. There are classes out there that are really, really changing the way that we're doing this. And this gets into a much bigger philosophical discussion on how is education itself changing as we move forward, and what does that commoditize. But there's probably nothing that you can't learn out there or that you're interested in that you can't get a hold of in some manner. Now, that being said, I like to do actually in-person classes, things of that nature. So I think you get that baseline knowledge, but you'll be surprised that even if you're willing to put in a half an hour or 45 minutes on a topic, you'll most likely be the most educated person in the room on it. And then when you can come in and translate just to that little bit, I think that'll really get you some of your skill sets. When we're talking about the harder skills, that's an exception, obviously, that takes a lot of time if you really want to get into data mining and using some very technical skills. But for these things that come up that are new, or what does Amazon Web Services mean in the context of my clients using that? What does that mean? You could probably read a 30-minute article on that and be one of the most educated people in the room on it.
Yeah, so I agree, and I know we've touched on a lot of the strategies, and so the other strategy I would say is just speak up, like own your interests, and tell everybody, tell your manager, this is what I'm interested in, tell your litigation support department, tell the attorneys that you're working with, I'm interested in gaining more technical competency in this area. Sit in your IT department, say, hey, can I, I'm kind of slow right now, can I, and maybe that'll, get more work from here, which is another valuable skill. But, just take advantage, of every opportunity and speak out. Tell people in your, your network. Maybe it's somebody that you went to school with that's on your LinkedIn group. Say, hey, can we have a 30-minute conversation about this topic? So I just think that speaking up, letting everyone know that you're interested or have a level of interest, you'll be amazed at what comes to you in terms of resources, people being willing to mentor you, people being willing to send articles your way because they think of you and they connect you with that area of expertise. So
I think, I come from a for-profit, law firm, and for right now, PD and professional, well, some of them are not for profit right now. But so professional development dollars and training dollars for paralegals can be really hard to come by. And I think that, a lot of the examples that the panelists just shared are really great ways to demonstrate to your employer that you are intellectually curious and you're going to put skin in the game. And that you are really going to step up as a professional and look for some of those opportunities that maybe are not the high dollar things to begin with, so that then you can learn how to advocate and navigate your system to get formal dollars if you need it for some of the certifications, or your manager or director, whoever's in charge of the PD budget, has more fuel to go in and say, look, we've got 10 people who need case map. Let's fly the trainer here. Right, let's bring them in and get, our people certified, or let's do a relativity, training, or let's do something that maybe, does cost, more money because you've already demonstrated through, steps. The other thing that, I would say is some of you are already doing those things, you're just not translating through to your employers what you're doing. And, you need to, if your employer doesn't have a professional development plan for you, that you sit down with and you work on with your manager, so that you can, translate the things that you're proactively doing, make one up for yourself. One of the things that I did for the paralegals at McKenna, which I thought was sort of really simple and just one of those things that is we have a professional development plan in writing for every member of my team. It's a very simplistic tool, but some people have never set professional training goals, and we're doing a lot of these things and weren't translating through to the firm what they were doing. And so by just giving them a tool, then I can say, look what they're already doing. I really do need that money in order to, get them the more formal stuff and to really, put some, fuel on this training fire. So if you don't have someone advocating for you within your employer or within your job, or what you're doing now doesn't necessarily require the skills that you want to get, learning how to advocate for yourself is critical in that process.
Yeah, I'm going to add a couple things too. When I was in business development, I struggled with actually making phone calls. I hated it, and that's like 80% of the job is picking up the phone and calling someone asking for an appointment. And because I struggled with it, I actually got advice from one of our managers for a sales coach down in Orlando, Florida. And I asked the company, hey, here's what it's going to cost. Will you pay to send me so I can go? You know what, Roga, we think it's a great idea, but, we're not going to pay for that. I paid for it out of my own pocket, and it's absolutely the best investment I ever made in myself. Long story short, I'm sitting here in front of you telling you to go do it for yourself. And the other thing, too, is that company, Xero, that I recommended, they actually have a series of 5 pro free webinars coming up starting, I think, next week or the week after. They're going to do a 1-hour free webinar on 5 different roles on the eDiscovery team between in-house counsel, outside counsel, paralegal, project manager, and one other thing. So definitely, look them up and register for those programs and try to attend those programs. And then the third thing I'd recommend is the Paralegal Boot Camp has an eDiscovery Project Management 101 course. I think it runs about $400 or $500. And again, time may be an issue, money may be an issue, but you have to invest in yourself. And if you're at a firm that doesn't get it, or doesn't have the funds, that's a career choice you're making for yourself. Whether you're staying at that firm or you're going to go somewhere else, this is on you to invest in yourself. And I agree with what Tara said. Go get yourself educated and start learning these things, and go to your firm and say, look, here's what I can do for you. I know Angela told me a story earlier about a paralegal who, I'll let you tell the story, but I mean, she positioned herself and went to her firm and.
The law firm, she and I used to work for the same law firm, and they tried to fill an eDiscovery management role for more than a year and couldn't find an attorney to fill that role. It was new, nobody had that expertise, so she went to the managing partners and said, look, I can do this. Give me the training. I think this is what I'm going to need to do. She went and did it. She's doing great now. She's no longer has the title paralegal, which some of us have to break with that identity. You have to think, you know, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? But yeah, and actually you bring up the paralegal boot camp. In developing this program tonight, I spoke with Ann Pearson, who's the founder of the Paralegal Boot Camp, and all the attendees will be sent a link. She has set up a free 90-minute eDiscovery program for anybody who would be interested. It's an introductory course. You can log in and you'll have availability for 30 days, and you can go on and off as many times as you like. So that's something she wanted to offer to people here. She was once a paralegal, and she's very much interested in developing the profession and educating fellow paralegals. So that will be sent to all the attendees tonight.
And Angela?
Yeah.
Where was she a paralegal manager?
Oh, she was a paralegal manager at McKenna London Aldridge. So yes. So, but I was super happy to that she put that together for us tonight. So while we wrap up what our panelists have to add on the slides, before we open up the floor to any questions, I'd just like to hear what the panelists have to say, what their vision of the future of technology in the legal industry is.
I think you're out of a job in a couple of years if you're not learning this.
Yeah, I mean, technology is a trend or here to stay. I don't think anybody questions that, and it's going to get more complicated as we move and we virtualize more and more. So kind of understanding this and being able to be that bridge and that ambassador. And the good part is, like I said, if you can be the bridge, and we use the term technology ambassador, you're going to keep yourself employed, because right now there's actually going to be a lot of people that are out there that are not going to understand this. And you don't have to get into a real complicated mechanism, but if you don't know what metadata is, right, and when you're getting eDiscovery, probably time to retool a little bit.
So I think in terms of the legal tech industry, it's going to be a lot of like process improvement and project management technology that's going to be very, very key to the evolution and efficiencies with law firms. So the better you're able to have the project management skills and have that technology background and be familiar with things that are going to make your legal process, you know, more efficient, that's going to be great. I think data analytics is going to be huge, not just predictive coding, but as I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Right. As Brian said earlier, you know, that it's not just, you know, the data that people have now has evolved to just being, you know, not like a risk but a commodity, and understanding preventative litigation matters and, you know, analytics that's related to that. And then the other thing, I think information governance and also just security. I think all of those technology trends are going to be very impactful for legal technology.
Yeah, I think law firms are sort of going through a little bit of an identity crisis as organizations right now, because they know what they sort of need, but they don't want to pay for it, right? And so I think, you know, the more that paralegals or legal professionals can become technology conversant, that's going to be helpful for them. But I think the law firms as businesses, which is where I've sort of gone to the dark side now within the law firm, to the, you know, sort of management side and trying to strategically plan our staffing and what we have. We need to invest more resources in this area and reward people who are taking those steps, because, you know, our clients are clearly telling us that they're not going to continue, you know, paying us for the ways that we have traditionally done things. And some of our folks that are still, you know, lamenting the loss of document review hours and, you know, all these other things need to sort of move on, because we're not going back. So.
Mike Chad, did they hear that?
Right. I was hoping that the panel would convey to you that the electronic information, the technical world, it's pervasive. It's no longer a debate. It's here to stay, and it's only the train's only accelerating. It's it's time to jump on. So I just wanted them to be able to convey to you that this isn't just a little niche conversation about something that might become popular or important. The time is now. It really is. And I hope that everybody will find the resource list helpful. And I'm sure any of the panelists here would be happy to answer any of your questions that you have. But I think what we've learned so far is, number one, the most important skill that you can have is initiative and to be proactive. No one can advance your career but you. And if you're waiting for somebody else to do it, it's not going to happen. My friend, who is now the eDiscovery manager at the law firm that I used to work at, all of her paralegals who she used to be colleagues with are all now upset with her because she took that initiative and advanced her career. You know, I don't want to be that person. So volunteer to train, get educated, get skills, learn how to translate that on your resume, and hopefully the resource list will give you a guide on how you can create a plan to do that. So I'll open up the floor to whoever has questions now.
I've got a question for you. I mean, at least for me, I mean, I'm pretty outspoken about this.
Hold on one second, Peter.
We want to make sure that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I'm pretty outspoken about this, but I love eDiscovery, but I'm also an old-fashioned, I mean, I've been a paralegal since the early 90s, and I don't want to really give that up. I mean, I'm really proud, but it kind of pains me when people say I used to be a paralegal, but this. I want to stay a paralegal, you know, I don't mind some of the down and dirty, where like some of the technology people will help you get the documents for a deposition. I want to continue from there on and help the attorneys analyze the documents. But what I'm finding is it's kind of tough within the law firm. I mean, Tara said, you know, the identity crisis, where it used to be the good thing with paper, even in the early days of eDiscovery, because we were part of the pull from the get-go when we had to travel there. We were part of the team, and then when it got scanned in, the concordance or summation, when things got electronic or searches, we were already part of the team. We knew everything. Now, with everything already on, you know, a hard drive or in the cloud from the client, it goes to IT, the partner talks to the managed services provider, or some firms have their eDiscovery departments that get that. And once in a while, unfortunately, the paralegal is, you know, left out, you know, unless they're, you know, on the provider side. And I mean, I haven't gotten to ask. I know a lot of firms, there are certain firms that are trying to do it all in-house, and they have a bunch of discovery attorneys, but you never really hear the discovery paralegals. I mean, I know that's coming, but I don't know what are some of y'all's thoughts of that, like a traditional paralegal still holding on to what they're doing now, but adding on with those technology skills.
I think you're probably the best person, but I do actually have something to say. There are eDiscovery paralegal positions specifically for that reason. And even just a month ago, and I'll forward the link to you, I showed you the job description, there was an AmLaw 100 that created a brand new position for litigation and eDiscovery project coordinator. And that is something that definitely a paralegal qualified for and was a better fit for because of their project management skills already. And so there are positions out there, and positions are being created specifically for you to stay in your field as a paralegal but still have an opportunity to advance.
Yeah, and if I could comment, I guess, as the law firm person, I think it's challenging sometimes within law firms because we can be bureaucratic, and you know there are fiefdoms within law firms, and you know different budgets pay for different staffs, and we call different people different things, and different people hire for different positions. So sometimes that's challenging to navigate, but as somebody who has made up my last 4 job descriptions within my law firm, I think you just have to be savvy about talking about the skill set that you have, and not necessarily concentrating on the title or where that expertise resides, and talk about why you can fill a need that the law firm and the client has, and then find somebody like me who can help you to write the job description and come up with the title and navigate sort of the bureaucracy of the law firm for everybody's benefit, because there certainly is that. And I have a lot of paralegals that when we change their title away from paralegal get really sad, right? But the other thing that we're doing is we're trying to work with clients to get them to understand when we set rates and we charge them for certain things, what the skill sets are that the people have that we're charging them for. And so when we use these generic sort of terms, it's really difficult to have those rate differentiations. And when you can't have rate differentiations, you can't have pay differentiations, which means we can't reward you for that higher technology skill set. So, within, really large organizations, that is a challenge. But, I would say, paralegal wasn't a title, before the 60s, right? We made it up. And we just have to think about, how our profession's going to continue to advance. And to think about how we can add that value. We'll always be, wear our P's, on our shirts proudly, whether that's our official titles or not.
What, other than the Microsoft softwares, Adobe, what would you say would be some of the basics, the fundamentals of fundamental courses, software applications that should be learned first and then maybe built upon? Other than like the specialized areas, like I see with the in-case forensic, that's
Right.
specialized. But what would be maybe the first 3 courses or something that someone should take a look at to build to have a foundation to build upon?
Right. I have one real quick question, or answer to that. I asked this of somebody recently, and they said they really love it if a paralegal knows how to use Adobe, the full version.
Really?
Yes.
The professional version?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a quick answer, because a lot of things are coming via PDFs.
Right.
So.
And I'm eDiscovery biased, but when you say like specialized software like, in-case or FTK, I would say that those are software that you do need to become familiar with. And not to say that you need to become certified, but you need to have a familiarity and you need to understand the terminology associated with it. So I would say that FTK, in-case, I would say the case maps, sanction, trial technology. I will also say relativity, and predominant, because it's the predominant document review platform, and understanding the terminology associated with that. And I think it's also understanding what software your firm is using, and maybe having a conversation with the CTO or CIO of what's on your rollout map, and asking them and becoming educated ahead of the trend of what's going to be the firm technology that they're going to be using, and becoming that advocate ahead of time, because every firm uses different technology. And so there's really no, okay, this is the hard line. There's, things that are prominent in the industry, but it's really going to be about where you are and where you want to go. So if there's specific firms that you want to target, find out what they're proficient in, match your proficiency. Find out where your firm is going and match your proficiency there.
I mentioned it earlier, there's a couple of vendors that have started some DIY platforms, which are actually more suitable to where the majority of the case needs are. The majority of the case needs are not the company cases, where the industry has focused on for so long. The majority of the needs are in the small and mid-sized firms, small and mid-sized cases. So take a look at some of, there's a few I would recommend. There's a company called the symbol, Legal Discovery, Logic Call, and CS Disco is a new company. Those are 3 DIY platforms that I'm aware of. I would recommend that you give these guys a call. Tell them I sent you and set up a demo. I don't get a fee for it. No, I just think they're awesome. But if you take, the reason I recommend it is because these tools are easy to use, and they're geared, and their cost is like a flat rate. And it's very, very suitable for your smaller to mid-sized cases. It's something I think you could easily take to your partner, especially in your firm that's not, or struggling to get on board. Go learn it, and you could test it out very easily and cost efficiently in your own firm, and start a skill set. You may not need relativity. You don't need relativity for everything. You definitely don't need predictive coding for everything. So that's where I would start.
What was the second one you mentioned?
There's a company called Legal Discovery. There's a company called Logical, Logikcull, and CS, like Cat Sam Disco, CS Disco.
I guess the last comment I would have on specifics, for me, I don't look at it as specific applications, right? We used to be in WordStar, then we went to WordPerfect, then we went to Word, then we went to, 2002, What I'm looking for is clusters of types of technologies. So I'm looking for, does somebody have a trial presentation software? If it's trial director, if it's sanction, if it's, then you can check that box. If somebody has a, database, summation, relativity, concordance, ringtail, they can check that box. I'm more interested, from a hiring perspective, if you truly understand the processes and the marriage of the tool, I can teach you, the difference between, trial director and sanction. If you don't understand the theory or what you're supposed to be doing with trial software, you can be an expert in whatever and know how to hit the buttons and get lost 5 seconds into the trial. So for me, it's more important than the specific brand to really understand, like, if you're using iPro, if you're using CaseMap, if you're using anything, why am I using it? How does that fit into the litigation? What's the purpose of this tool? And then I can move you onto whatever platform I need as a firm or for the client. We have 6 different platforms that we use internally to McKenna. So it's client specific, it's case specific. So I have to be able to move people around depending on what the matter is, in which office, in which state.
Question that you asked earlier, did we kind of touch on it sufficiently?
With the new technology, software and requirements now, with the new technology, software is exploding. The GW, the paralegal program, expand on those technology courses. Will they, in the future, offer those? Because I would be willing to come back and get an update.
I told Tony this question was coming. I don't know.
Go ahead,
Tony,
Angela.
Well,
We've discussed it.
I certainly hope so. That is definitely my hope. I mean, this is just where it's going. It's not a debate anymore. And I'm certainly providing the resources for GW to do that. And I think that they're smart and that they will take that next step. Yeah.
As a former marketing person, I'm just informal show of hands. Who would be open to coming back to GW and taking additional skills in technology, like we're talking about tonight? Or if you haven't been here before, would like to come. Show of hands, please. Show of hands.
I think a couple of people could vouch for him. We'll take him.
That's about 75%,
yeah.
maybe 80.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good to know.
So Angela did not learn that lesson in 2nd grade when you say, I've got this idea, and the teacher goes, that's a great idea, why don't you do that? But Angela and I are actually in discussion on that right now. So, and she brought it to us, and it's a great idea, and we're exploring it. And Tara, by the way, has brought that to us. I mean, where we even are now is because Tara came to me and said, how many years ago? You really need to get on this technology thing.
Yeah.
And so we incorporated as much as we could at that point within the constraints or the confines of the university and the system and all of that. So Tara brought us a long way, and now Angela is also working on it. So it's a team effort.
Right.
And it's a big university, but things happen eventually.
About a year ago, I found a statistic because I was actually asked by a law school in the Midwest to launch a roundtable in their city. And at that time, it was only a year ago, there were 175 law schools that don't teach eDiscovery. And that's painful. And the reality is, even before technology, before I left being a paralegal, I was doing 100% of the discovery. And even now, you're still doing 80 to 90%. The paralegals are doing the majority of it. So and the attorneys are relying on you. You know, the older attorneys are certainly relying on paralegals and the younger people to learn the technology, but also the millennials are not just an idea. They're already associates in the firms and legal departments. They're in mid-level management. This is how they communicate with technology. So I think it's a fantastic idea. There's only one online university I'm aware of that teaches paralegal technology and specifically in eDiscovery. So GW has a really big, fantastic opportunity to be a thought leader and start driving this train for paralegals, and I encourage you to do so.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I do have a question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, thanks. So I know certainly the older attorneys in the firms are relying on the paralegals to drive the technology. What about the younger? What about the younger attorneys? And my bigger question is, what's the difference between the way that lawyers are dealing with the technology in the firm and the way that paralegals are dealing with the technology in the firm? Traditionally, the paralegals have driven the technology, but is that still the case, and is that going to remain the case?
Tara, do you want to start? Because I see it from one point of view and you see it from a different point of view.
Yeah, I guess I want to stick up for the more experienced attorneys. We call them tenured, at McKenna versus senior. You know, I find that our less experienced attorneys, even though they're, they have the bat utility belt, as we call it with every device, they don't necessarily approach eDiscovery in a more sophisticated manner than some of our more tenured attorneys. I found in my research, even a lot of the law schools that teach eDiscovery, it's all law theory based versus actual application and, processing. So even for the schools that are addressing it, they're not addressing what the paralegals specifically usually focus on, which is the logistics, pounding the application, working with your outside and inside, subject matter experts. So when we sort of approach attorney education, we just had a whole panel of judges that came in, and we hired some industry experts and did a 3-day, all-day eDiscovery symposium at McKenna about a month ago. And we put all of our associates in the firm-wide, flew them into DC, and locked them in a series of rooms for 3 days. And we made them go through relativity tests for 4 hours. This is an application that they supposedly work on, all the time in their litigation. And while I will not publish the specifics of our results, we found that additional training was definitely required. So I don't think that there's that definite sort of, gap millennials and baby boomers, and as much as we sort of think, we use technology differently, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily translate into the hard science of ESI.
Yeah, I completely agree with her. I was actually, it's expected that the younger that you are, that you've got your back utility, I love that, and that you learn. But I'm not a millennial, I'm Gen X, and I wasn't raised on this technology, and so especially when I ended up going into business for myself, I'm self-taught a lot of the things I know now that help me run a business efficiently out of my home, so that probably about 80% of the money I make now is profit. And I was actually at the Birmingham Bench Bar Retreat a few weeks ago. To all you paralegals, I was the only non-attorney asked to be a speaker, okay, out of 300 lawyers and judges. So again, you've got 4 out of 5 of your panelists, former paralegals, in going in different directions. So you have an opportunity here, but the last panel they did was based on age range, and it was the same thing, and I'm listening to them, they just assumed that based on your age, you had a different level of knowledge with technology, and it simply wasn't true. It's your initiative. What are you going to do with it? Are you driven? Are you passionate? Do you want to be more efficient? The more efficient you are, the more your clients are going to stick to you. Can you make more money? Sure you can. But the only way you're going to make more money is by making sure you have that sticky factor with your clients.
I just wanted to weigh in on that because I spent 4 years, in a law firm setting where there were a lot of first and second year associates who were tasked with managing the discovery,
and who had no idea and didn't want to speak up and didn't want to say anything. And so I would spend time whiteboarding, this is what a DAT file is, this is what a coding form is, this is, so I think there's a huge opportunity because a lot of the older associates are tasking the younger associates with that assumption that they know it or they get it or they have that training, but they really don't know. I mean, there's just such a huge opportunity for the paralegals to step up and guide that process, for the eDiscovery project managers to step up and guide that process. It kind of became a joke, like, oh yeah, we're training the first and second years. Like, who are we? But that's just kind of what happens because that on-the-ground training in eDiscovery hasn't yet hit the law schools, and I don't know if it will.
I'll take this in a slightly different direction. In a sense, is I think the big key here is to see not are you proficient in technology, which is important, but what has technology done? And my boss always says, from a leadership perspective, what it has done is it's forced us to stick our heads up and start looking around instead of looking down. And I think that's actually, if you look at something, millennials might not necessarily be better at technology, but they're usually better at multitasking or doing multiple things, and they stick their heads up and they look around. But I think anybody can have that skill set. And I'll give you a hard example here is in talking with a company, they said, I don't understand how, we lost this, we did a bunch of patent protection, we did all this stuff, we secured our product, how did we potentially lose this? And we got into conversations about them, so you think about that from an IP perspective, and usually we just concentrate on, oh, we're protecting this patent or whatever. Well, they told us where they set up their server farm, and I'm not going to say where it was, but you can imagine there are certain places in the world that you where you set up your server farm, and I don't care how much money you spend on intellectual property protection, you're not going to be able to protect it. So, it's that thing is putting your head up and asking those questions. So no matter where you're at, and I'm a big believer, and I say this in my own organization, is breaking down the titles and roles, and when you approach something, it's really much a team approach, and having everybody being able to stick their head up and look around and asking the questions that nobody else is asking and looking at. So I think that's the key part to take away.
I was just going to say the one challenge from an AmLaw 25 is kind of like, I don't know if you, Tara, or Tania want to attest to this, is now, you either have the firms that have this full eDiscovery where they're keeping everything in-house, or if it is with the associate like us, that happens with us a lot, but I'm kind of like, got to grasp for it or it's going to be taken. It might sound good to the client, but it's the managed services provider, so then they're doing all of the work in concordance with our eDiscovery department, that support doing the down and dirty, and that associate. So I might have some stuff to do, but I think sometimes some of the big firms aren't utilizing the paralegals enough. And even if they knew, it's kind of like being in the table when these decisions are made, and unfortunately a lot of times it's made by the people that are higher up that don't really know and are just looking at it as a business decision.
So I can attest to that fact. Being a eDiscovery project manager and being, working in a lit support department, a lot of times the paralegals weren't on those conversations or involved in those conversations, but I will say that with a specific partners or specific case teams where that paralegal had positioned themselves as a go-to subject matter expert who had added value in designing document review workflows, they were always in the loop. And so while maybe 80 to 90% of the cases, we might not have had that initial conversation with the paralegal, there were certain paralegals or certain case managers that certain case teams and partners always brought to the table. So I think it's your initiative in really opening your mouth and saying, hey, this is my value, this is what I can do, maybe being open to a new role or title so that you are brought to the table, but I think it's that combination, so.
I think it's also about how your law firm institutes the beginning of cases, and how they, we go through the, paralegal needs to be proactive, you need to involve everybody and give them a seat at the table from the beginning. But then we actually instituted something that was mandated for litigations that were over a certain dollar amount that we're going to use either our managed service platform or our eDiscovery of counsel. Now the partners who have those cases have to go through a certain series of steps, and that mandates that the people that are internal who are supposed to be in those driver's seats get in the driver's seat, versus the case sort of gets down the road 6 or 8 months and people start looking back and going, oh yeah, we should have done that, we should have reached out to that person, or we should have organized it differently. And it gives our subject matter experts an opportunity to say, this is the fork in the road where you need to make that decision. And that's been really critical for us when we instituted that, because then it's not just on the paralegal, to figure out how to get a seat at that table. We pull the seat up for them, and we say, this person is supposed to be involved in this level of discussion. And I think that's really helped our paralegals.
Does anybody have any other questions? Well, I found it insightful, and I know a lot about this topic, but thank you to each of you for taking time out, and it's incredible how I just picked up the phone and contacted people, and they are so willing to help if you just ask. So I encourage everybody to not be afraid to ask for help, and whatever area of technology interests you, find a mentor, network, find out more information, take that initiative yourself. So with that said, thank you so much to each of you for sharing your expertise and your time.
If I may, I'd also like to thank you all for coming out again tonight, for supporting the Paralegal Alumni Association. If you'd like to show another way of supporting the Paralegal Alumni Association, we have forms back there. We have the Paralegal Alumni Association Scholarship Fund. So if you'd like to support in any way, any amount, $10 or more, it's up to you, but we have a dedicated scholarship fund for this community, for incoming students who ultimately will become alumni as well. So thank you for coming out tonight. Thanks. Oh, and please, we have food, we have drink, we have work.